Cognitive behavior therapy for cognitive restructuring. We are going to talk about that. The first instance of our cognition is our thoughts. Our thoughts impacts our actions and how we feel. So in short, what we think is how we feel and how we act. So our thoughts controls our actions and our therefore a very important step in the cognitive behavior theory in order to restructure our cognition will be to have a good control on our thoughts. The second instance of our cognition is our emotions, that is also termed as our feelings. So how we feel or how our emotions are, it impacts our actions as well as our thoughts. Our thoughts are influenced by our feelings, and by this interpretation, our actions are also influenced. Therefore, the second focus of the cognitive behavior theory will be how to have a good control on our emotions. Actions. The third and the most important instance in our cognition. Our actions defines our thoughts and largely our emotions. So in short, what we do is how we think and how we feel. Actions, thoughts and emotions. These three instances plays a big role in our cognition. In our cognitive behavior therapy, we consider the EAT format of our cognition. EAT format is E for emotions, A for actions and T for our thoughts. Cognitive distortion is the distortion of the cognition, the distortion of your thoughts. It starts with the negative views about oneself. For example, you might think that I am worthless. This cognitive distortion of the negative views about oneself can result into the negative views about the world, where a person starts thinking that everybody hates me because I am worthless. Now this cognitive distortion about the negative views about oneself and about the world will lead to a negative views about your future, where a person starts thinking that I'll never be good at anything because everybody hates me and I am worthless. So you can very well see how a cognitive distortion starts from the negative views about oneself, that is from a negative viewpoint about how you consider yourself, and then bring on to the negative views about the world, and it distorts your future thoughts also. Very well explained in Becks' cognitive triad. Cognitive restructuring, it has to be an ongoing regular process, be it any age, any gender, any position you hold. In order to maintain and attain a healthy lifestyle, one should always focus on a resilient cognitive structure. If you are able to fight the brain fog, come out of it, you will be able to define and structure your cognition. Now, brain fogging can be defined as all the unnecessary negative thoughts surrounding you most of the time, all the time. The negative approach towards yourself, towards the world, and towards your future, the events that surrounds you. Let's talk about the various ways we can restructure our cognition, that is cognitive restructuring. So we'll talk about 6 pointers here. The first method of cognitive restructuring is to adopt a problem-solving approach. If there is a problem, there is always a solution to it. We only need to train our mind to find the solution instead of being surrounded by the problem itself, thinking about it all the time and letting it impact your mental and physical health, at the same time impacting your overall growth. If you have a habit of carrying your problems without a problem solving approach, you will distort or disturb your cognition that would result into a poor approach towards you and the surroundings. Do work on the solutions. Along with the cognitive restructuring, a problem solving attitude would keep your cognition creative and resilient. It would prepare you to come out of the situation or stand strong to face it. The second and a very important method of cognitive restructuring is to define a purpose of your life. A person without a purpose leads to cognitive destruction. Life without a purpose leads to directionless cognition. We often end up losing interest or passion towards our actions and the events. Defining and attaching a purpose to the life would bring in meaning to the decision we take or the action we make. A purpose would keep your cognition active and creative. A purpose would define and establish a goal to reach. The next method for cognitive restructuring is to create a tangible long-term goal. It can be one goal or it can be more than one goals, but it should be tangible. Tangible means it should be achievable as per your strength and your weaknesses, as per your circumstances. Once you have defined your long-term goals, the next step is to create and define short-term goals in order to achieve your long-term goals. Set the deadlines for your short-term goals. Those deadlines should be set after a thorough research work, and it should be tangible and flexible. So the deadlines should also be tangible and it should be a little flexible also. The next method of cognitive restructuring is to understand and define your functional and dysfunctional thoughts. So you really need to understand what your functional thoughts are and what your dysfunctional or negative thoughts are. So this method of cognitive restructuring can be defined through one example where the event is that your design or your creation or your work was rejected by the client. So the dysfunctional thought for this event can be, I would never work with that client. The consequence will be that your efforts will reduce and the efficiency will also reduce. At the same time, the functional thought for the same event where you design your work, your idea was rejected by the client can be that next time I would prepare 3 design options in advance so that at least one can be selected. Now, the consequence of this will be the increased productivity and efficiency at work with a problem-solving attitude. In cognitive restructuring, very important method is to develop a decision-making skill. So the next method of cognitive restructuring here is to develop your decision-making skills. So how do you develop your decision-making skill It is very largely connected with defining a purpose and making a plan to achieve that purpose. Make a plan, set the deadlines, define tangible long-term goals and short-term goals. Evaluate the options accurately before you set your deadlines. Anticipate or visualize the outcomes or the consequences of your plan and put your plan in action. The last but not the least method of cognitive restructuring is to adopt a resilient frame of mind. Resilience means to adopt the negative and positives in your life and start focusing on the positives so that you can balance your approach and develop a resilient mind frame. In other words, you can say that you will be molding your negative mind frame or your dysfunctional thoughts into a resilient mode. So, how do you develop a resilient mind frame? How do you mold your negative thoughts into resilience? Few important pointers here can be: one should not be complacent of their thoughts and let their thoughts overtake the logical thinking. We are the slave of our mind. Actually, the servant has to remain servant and the master has to remain as the master. So one should not give up to his or her thoughts or to the illusions their thinking process or the cognition creates. If you learn to have a good control on this, then you will develop a resilient mind frame.